And this is the tutorial I'm going to show you here today is quite simple. It's quite basic. So because Excel can be used quite extensively, you can go quite deep in your development of your spreadsheet here. What I'll go through here is how I use Excel mostly for whether it's research purposes or just organizational purposes. So this is what we'll walk through today. Just do a small spreadsheet tutorial here. So first of all, as you can see, you have columns and rows. You have quite a lot. Now I believe there was the default was 1,000 if I remember correctly. Yes, so it is 1,000 rows um, for the default in the spreadsheet here. But let's say you don't want all of these, you can always click and drag on your column, right click and delete the rows. So it just deleted. And then same idea, we can go with the columns. If I click and drag, I can select and drag columns. I can also delete the columns. So this is the first thing for just for organizational purposes. Usually, you do not need to do that. Same idea here. You can actually insert above or below, or you can even if you select more than one, let's say select three, then you can insert three above or insert three below. And same idea with the columns as well. Moving forward here, you would, it depends on what you have, but a good thing to always include is a title. So the first thing, the first column is usually used for the title here. So we can have, let's say you go organizing an Excel sheet for registration purposes, for people registered this. So you can have a first name here and and then a last name and then let's say a an ID of some sort, like UC ID, for example. I like to format it to make the title all into the center. So I just select center here. I can even bold it. All of these should be familiar. It's the same idea as any text editor. But there's a few additions to that. So first of all, you can have, if let's say you extend your box here, make it go big, and you want to put this in the middle of the box, for example, you will go to your alignment here. You can either put at the top of the box, the middle of the box, or the bottom. So let's say we keep it at the bottom here, and then if you have a long text, so let's say I put my name for it. It's quite long. You have a long text here, as long as you don't have another text beside it. Um, As long as you don't have another text beside it, it will show. But if you do have two cell boxes that have a text, it will not show. Now, there's multiple ways you can do this. Either you can double click this here, and it will expand it to the width of the shortest or the longest text. Or you can go here, and there's multiple options as well. In this case here, this is overflow. This is the way you're seeing it right now. You can also do wrap, which means if I extend this, and go in two lines here, it will wrap it around. Now, um, the text is not long enough to see it, but it should wrap it around if there was more text and spaces. And there is also clip which will just cut it. If the text is not big enough, it will just cut the text. Um, Anyways, you can play along more with these. Now there's a few more other things you can do. You can either keep it straight like this, make it diagonal in any direction. You can even make it um, like this or the other way. So there's quite a lot of formatting you can play around, and you can even change the angle here. So it depends on what you're doing here. Hyperlink, comment, and these two commands here, you should be aware. It's quite simple to use. You can try it your own time. And we're going to talk about filters today as well. Now let's organize this. Um, Once again, if you double click any cell or any column, it will get it to the biggest or the longest field in that text here, or in the box in the cell. And then, so this is the first thing we're going to talk about. Now, in this case here, let's say add another cell and say we call it worth. Um, what I will show you here is, let's say the worth of that person or the research or whatever you're doing here has a certain monetary account to it. As you can see here, it does not show the monetary sign. So there's one easy way you can do this is just go format as currency. The default currency here is euros. You can change it, but by just going more format here, and then you can go more format, more currencies or other things. And if you select more currencies, in this case here, I have the Canadian dollar enabled. So I apply that, and it will just be, oops, it will just stay here at the bottom here for each time you want to use it. So you can just press Canadian here, and it defaults to how the Canadian currency is usually laid out. So, and then we can just have a percentage as well. So a percentage, same idea again. So what I just did here is I made all of them to be the same format, the whole column here. And then percentage, same idea. Let's say I put any number here and I just select percent and it will align to percent. Now let's say this is too big of a decimal range for you. Then you can just play with this one here. That's decrease decimal places or increase decimal places. As the name implies, if you decrease, it decreases the decimal. If you increase, it increases it. So this is what we have here. And if at any point you want to edit a cell, you can just go on your cell, whether you move with your arrow keys, press enter, and then you can edit it, and then press enter again, or you can just select on the box up here and then add the number or remove the numbers you need. Press enter again. So this is what we have here. There's quite a lot of formatting you can play with. So depends on, again, what you're trying to do. So if you go on under data, you will find a lot of different properties that I'm going to show you. Actually, I'm going to show you quite a lot of the properties available in format and data. If we go on format first here and you go on number, you will see you have the same list that you just saw earlier. So this is where the list is. As you can see, you can have numbers, percent, scientific notation, different currency methods, dates, time, and stuff. Another one you can usually use, quite usually popular, is date here. And you can actually type the date. So let's say January 22nd, 2021. And if you press enter, and then you select the date here, and you go format, number, date, it does change it to the date you just typed. So in this case here, it's 22 of January 2021. So, and the cool thing about date is if you double click it, you can just see a mini calendar. You can easily select any date you want. So that's about the date here. Now, let's say you have a long list. And as you can see here, the title does not disappears. If you see, there's two big drops here, or um, big lines here. You can just move it to whatever cell you want to freeze. And as you can see, if I keep scrolling down, you can still see it. You can even extend more. And as you can see, all these cells do not are still there. And then we can bring this same thing with the columns. And if I scroll sideways, you can see that these stay as well. Okay, so that's for formatting purposes. Now, there A lot of people use Excel not because it's quite actually strong. It's a powerful tool to use. It's a very powerful tool for engineers as well. And that is because of the equations you can. There's a lot of equations you can access. So to access an equation, you can just select the cell, and then either you double click the cell so you can write inside the cell, or just go up in the function bar here. Just type an equal sign. Now, the equal sign just means that you're going to type a function. There's quite a lot of pre-defined functions in Excel here, and a popular one would be sum. So as you can see, if you type any letter, you will find the equation here. And all you need to do is either select it with the mouse or select it with your arrow keys and press enter. And you can see that you have the function here. Now, when you have this selected, you can actually go and select any box you want, and you will see that the letter of the box is actually shown here. And then if you want to select more than one box, you can press Control, which is selects any random box. If you press, and then you can even select the box more than once. But usually you don't want to do that. Depends on the function. You can just press on backspace and delete it. You can go Shift, and if you select anything further in the arrow, it will select the whole column or the whole row. And if you select, and same idea, if you go Shift and go below on the same column, it will select the whole field here. Now, in this case here, I selected a box, and you can do that also by click and dragging. If let me, so you can just click and drag, and it does it for you. So, yeah, so this is how we select. Let's say I select two values here and press enter. You will see that the sum has been added. Now, notice that it is 2590. That because 90% is 0.9. It's 90 over 100. So that is correct. Now, once again, you can play with the format and go number, and maybe I want it to be a scientific. And this is what I have for this one here. Now, let's say you actually do something that's incorrect. So let's say I open sum again. And as you can see here, it doesn't matter if you type all lowercase or uppercase, it will still work as long as you select the correct one. You can also select on the formula help, which either by pressing F1 on your computer or pressing the arrow that you just saw, and it tells you what to select. So it tells you what it does. So it returns the sum of a series of numbers, the first number, and stuff like that. And then you can always select more, and it actually opens the documentation. The documentation is quite useful. It has quite a lot of functions, as you can see here. There's even more they can find online. The Google Sheets function has all the functions that you might encounter. So you can see here that the function separates into types, names, and syntax. Usually, you can go through here and find whatever you want. So let's say I want a function that looks for the secant. So I can do that and look for it, and I can find out under math, and I can find the secant, and just all I need to do here is type the angle. And you can even read the description here. There's quite a lot of functions that does the same thing. So in this case here, this will returns the cosecant of the given complex number. So in this case here, it can accept complex number. Now remember, the complex number can either be real and imaginary, or only imaginary. In this case here, returns the secant of the angle measured in angles. So they'll most likely will only require a um, a real number. So the Google Sheets function here is quite useful. I believe it has all the functions. Now, of course, because I haven't used all the functions, I don't know if they're all there. But yeah, there's quite a ton you'll most likely encounter. So this is what we have for the Google Sheets here, and how to access it again, go through learn more. And then let's say, once again, I select something that is incorrect. So let's say I select a character, a string. And you don't need to close the bracket, but let me just show you that I don't have to. So if I press enter here, you'll notice that it gives out a 0. So clearly because ML1 here is a string, if it tries and adds it, it won't work. Now let's say if I actually try and select a like another one here, it will also return 0. So as you can see, you, if I try and select a letter as a number, it will only display the number. If I try and select a cell that has nothing, or if I'm mathematical equations, because there is a number, it will count the cell that has nothing as 0. Okay. Um, and if I just select nothing again, it will turn out to be 0. So it really depends on how the function was developed. Some other function will give you errors. It will just say either it's not there or cell is empty or just say a reference error. All of these just means that either the input you're trying to send to the function here is incorrect. Most likely it's not a number, or that you just mistyped something. So this is what we have for functions here. You can also insert charts. So chart here is, as you might be aware, whether you call it a graph, a chart, whatever you want to call it. There's quite a lot of different. Now Google has a thing where it suggests you based on the data you have in here, it tells you which one's the best chart. You might have encountered a line chart before, which, as the name implies, just has the lines. A smooth line chart just makes it look smoother. You can have a bar with line, a pie chart, different types. You can even have a 3D one. You can have maps now, which is quite useful in many cases. You can have an organizational chart. If you code or anything of or that you just need to organize stuff, you can do that. You can even have a table chart, which in many cases is not necessary because Excel's already a table. But if you think that you might need that for any reason, then it's available as well. So there is that here. Now, in terms of customization, now let's say we're going to line chart here because it has more customization. You can select different colors. You can have borders. You can change the theme of the text. You can make it into a smooth line, maximize, so it removes all the borders. Plot null values, so if you have anything that's not actually a number, it's going to try and plot it. But all it's going to do is actually say null. And then you can even have a compare mode, which I won't go into detail. You can look for that on your own. Where you can you can edit the title, subtitle, horizontal axis, vertical axis, undershot axis, and axis title. Um, Series is the dots that are available on your data. So if you have any data um, on your chart here, then you can edit it using series. So in this case here, you can change the color, the types of line. You can even add so I can even add more points if I want. And I'll show you another way to add more points. So by doing that, you can add like two different lines. And a useful one as well is you can have error bars, which shows you the error based on statistics. If you took statistics course, you might be aware of what I'm talking about. You can have labels for the data. As you can see, it shows up on the data right here. The graph, you can actually edit things on the graph. So if you go and edit the chart here, and It doesn't allow me, but you can either expand or decrease the size of the chart. Change the name right on the title here, and as you can see, it will pop up what it's editing. Same thing on the vertical. You can change the title right away, stuff like that, and then you can play with the horizontal and vertical axes. So whether you, let's say, um, you want to go on the vertical axis and change the value that it shows, or you want to show the axis line for this one. You can even change the scale. There's quite a lot of stuff you can play with. And then finally here, you can even add minor lines, which are quite useful. If you, especially if you want to demonstrate your graph anywhere, and then you can have major ticks if you so wish to do so. Um, so it's nice to play with these and see the different things you can have on your graph. Um, and as this is just the basics, I'm just showing you how to start it and where to look for those things. You can look for these on your own, look further how to develop these. Now, but one more thing to mention here is, let's say you selected the wrong data. You don't need to delete the graph and then deselect your data and do it. All you can go here is go through the setup here, and then the first part is usually the vertical axis. So we can select these, for example, and then select this as the data. And then you can even add another range, but that will usually mess it up. So if you're trying to build a 3D graph, which I haven't built, but you can just add another range for that. And then it, if it displays no data, that means you do have something incorrect, basically, in the way you labeled or the way you set up your data here. So in this case here, um, you can combine the ranges. So the data is known as a range that you're selecting. You can, if you try and make it horizontal, so you try and make the data only on the horizontal. In this case here, I'm trying to put names, text, and labels same, like a value and a text on the same line. So that clearly would not work. So you can go and combine them vertically, and this data is actually useless. But if you're actually developing stuff, which I could show you more of an example later, it could come out to be quite useful. So that's the quick introduction about graphs here. Now, a few other things to note is filters. So let's say I have multiple names. Let's say I have that. So random names like this, random values for all of these, and then okay. And then a cool feature that Excel has is you can actually drag this box here and just drag it around, and it will copy down everything based on what it thinks it is what you need. So in this case here, it drag it down and increase the date by 1. Now, if I have one number and extend it, it would extend it all with the same value by 1. If you go 1 and 2, and you select both of them and extend them, it would increment. Now, if I go 1 and 3, select both of these and extend them, it also increments by 2s. So there is a certain AI built in here that determines based on the inputs that you have selected, and when you drag this box, it detects what you think the extension of the data should be. So so this is a cool feature that it has. If you try and extend texts, in many cases or most cases, it will just repeat it. If you try and extend two different boxes with text, it will just keep repeating it. So so this is what you'll see in the case here. If you have something that is quite random and you try expanding it, it really usually depends on your luck what happens there. So um, as long as there's a certain pattern, you can try and extend it and just see what happens. And if it does work as you want, then good. If it doesn't, then then maybe type it yourself, or maybe type two more or three more rows and extend it, and maybe the AI would recognize what you're trying to do. Anyways, so now let's talk about filters. So if I select the whole box here that I'm working with, and let's say I apply a filter, so I just go on the box here and go create filter, or even I can just go on data and then create filter. So if I do that and I create a filter, it just created a filter for me. The filter is just the small box that it added at the top. How the filter works, the top row you selected in your square is usually the title row, and that's the one that's going to have the filter button. Everything else underneath is just part of the filter. What the filter allows you to do is I can actually start sorting them. So this is sorting alphabetically, or the opposite way, or even I can, if you do have colors, so let's say I fill this color with yellow, and I fill this, I don't know, with red, and I fill this one blue. I can actually go under the filter here and sort by color and by fill color, and maybe I just want the white space, or maybe I want the whites and then the yellows first. So this is how this is done here. If you can even this filter stuff, which is actually in many cases why you're going to apply a filter in the fill space. So that's I only want the yellows to show. So if you do that, you'll see that you have a sign here that says the filter is enabled. You can even notice that some of the rows are missing. And you'll see that everything that is not yellow has disappeared. You can just click on it and then go none, and it will clear that. Or you can even do it by names. So if I go filter by value, and I can, let's say, clear all and just select Khaled, for example, and only Khaled will show. Or even just select Khaled and Jack, and Khaled and Jack will only show. So, so this is filtering and how it works. Now, it will work with anything you have here. So if you go sort here, it just sorts it based on numbers. If you have numbers and letters um, in the same box, and if you go and try and sort it, and let's disable this filter, it's going to put the numbers first. So that's a default that it has here. And if you are working collaboratively and you apply filters, the other person will see exactly what you did. That means that if, let's say, I'm only displaying, for example, Haley, for example, and the other person will see that will see exactly what you're seeing. So this is something worth noting. So in this case here, I can select two different types. In this case, I selected Haley, and only where the cell color is white. So this is important for filters. Now, another cool thing that Excel has is I can select this whole column here and go data. And then actually, let me just show you filter here. I can click create a new filter view. So in this case here, what I'm doing is I'm actually creating a filter. So um, in this case, the name here we call it filter one. And let's say I update the range for it. And let's say the filter would select F4, F7, I don't know, F12. Okay. Let's say for now, oh, okay. So that is my mistake here. So the filter view here would just allow you to select which range the filter is applied on. So if I can, if I extend this to like 27, in this case here, as you can see, the filter is only applied up to 27. But notice that you will not see it if you go outside of the filter view, because the rest are not um, shown that way. Um, and you can just reselect the filter view going this way. Anyways, if we go now, the idea of the filter view here, which makes it quite useful, is let's say you're working on a project in Excel and you want to save a certain filter view to show some data for the next day after you applied the certain filters and the filters are perfect. So you can just turn on the filter view and save it with the certain data that you're showing. And then you can even have multiple different filter views, and you can even so you can just click back and forth to see them. There's a shortcut for that, and that'll be the arrow beside the filter view here. So this is what we have for the data. Now, another type of data which is quite important is known as the checkbox. And the checkbox should be oh yeah. So the checkbox is the type of data here where you can go format and then actually you will go on data and then data validation. First of all, we probably want to select where we want this to apply, and then we can press OK. And then there's multiple things we can do. So let me just walk you through a few of them. So list from a range. So we can enter a range here and say I want these, and then press OK. And then let's say press OK here or press save. You will notice that all of them have now an arrow beside them. If I click, you'll notice that it's the actual data that I selected earlier. So this is data validation here is actually one, it's a very important tool for organizational purposes. You can have a list of items. That means you write your own stuff. So you can have various items here. The only thing that matters is the comma. The space does not really matter. And then we can save it here. And as you can see, there's multiple different things we can use. Now let's say I put my own data in here. Let's say I put 89. You will see that there's an error, and you can see it by the small red arrow here. And that is, it just says that the input of the must be on the item on the specified list, which is these ones here. So if I go back on data validation here, I can even reject the input. So if I go back here and go try and type my own, or actually let's put this in and try and type my own, you will notice, oops, right, I have to select all of them. Select all of them, go data, data validation, reject input, save. And you will see that it will pop up a message here. The data I enter validates, and you should only enter these. So this is important. Now, if we go back to data validation, we can even don't show the drop-down list here. And that means that if I type anything, it will still give me the error, but just the person or what you're trying to design should know. And it will show up if you either double click or start typing, it will show up things that's possible. So this is what data validation allows. You can even have numbers you can select from, text, and it's a data validation. So it's like an if-else statement on code. So if the text contains, I don't know, Y or U, then we can show a warning and say that's not allowed. And just for purpose here, you can see that my name does not have a U. If you type, I don't know, Laura, Laura has a U, so it won't show any warning. If we Um, so it says here, input must be text that contains you. If we go back on data validation, that's for text. You can even have a date. So um, you can input a certain date. Now you can put different validations here. You can say that the date requested has to be a certain date, equal to, before, after. So just based on the date that you have here, it just needs to follow it for it to work. You can even have a custom formula. Um, and that one gets a bit more complicated. But the one I wanted to show as well is a tick box. The cell value for a tick box is usually true or false. It's important because I'll show you in a second. But you can even change it yourself if you want. Now we can go on save and you can copy a cell. And when you copy a cell with Control C and paste it, it prints the cell exactly as it is. So that means that it copies everything that's on the cell. And if I go Control X for cut and then paste it anywhere, it just removes it and it puts the cell somewhere else. Okay. Now the tick box here, what it allows you to do is, as the name implies, tick box. Okay. Now let's say I go on another cell here, and I go, let's say, um, format, and then go conditional formatting. Conditional formatting is a very important tool in Excel here or spreadsheet. And what this allows you to do is is set a few rules that will display something as it is, or as you think it should be. So in this case here, let's put some formatting rules to this whole range. And let's say the first rule we say is if it's empty, and we will make it color. You can either select the top arrow here, and these are the default ones. You either say it's yellow, red. Let's say if it's empty, put it red. Okay. Let's add another rule. And let's say if the cell is not empty, you can, let's say if the date now. So there's all these options here. You can say if the text contains, does not contain, text stuff, date stuff, number stuff. All these are for numbers, and a custom formula. Let's say I go date is. So let's say the date is today, and it will be green. So that means let's say I pick one here and let's make it today's date. As you can see, if it is today's date, it will be green. Now let's add another rule. Let's say the date is tomorrow. If it's tomorrow, maybe I want it to be green, and even the text color will be red and bolded, underlined, like so you can know that it's tomorrow. And if I press done here, and let's change another one and make this tomorrow. As you can see, everything is applied. Um, so let's add one more here. And let's say date is before day. Ooh, actually, let's apply to all of them. Let's cancel this one. And let's go if date is um is sorry after today, then let's make it okay. Okay. So that looks good. So the conditional formatting, something you should note is that a rule order. So if you see the list on the right here, oops, let me just open it again. If any the order has the higher precedence. So if you notice here, if date is tomorrow and date is after today, they're both correct. So if a date is tomorrow, they're both correct. But you will notice that it's actually green and red here. And that the only reason is because the order of it is higher. So if I put this at the bottom here, you will notice that turns back to yellow because yellow is first. So make sure that the order is correct because let's say I put this as the second one here, you will notice that um, that anything you had underneath it won't happen as long as it's still equal. So this is if you're thinking of coding, this is exactly like an if else statement. The first one is else, the second will be else if, the third will be else if, and the last one will be else. So this is Excel is in many ways there is a lot of coding functionalities in there. Even if you go Excel spreadsheets, you can even go into deeper, and then you can actually start coding your own functions. But of course, I won't go through that here. And then one more thing for organizational purposes that's quite useful is alternating colors. So if I go alternating colors here, once again, select the top one, your title column is important to select it because if you do not, and I can show you that, if you do not select it, it will I change that here. Okay. Anyways, so if we go to alternating colors here, you will notice that it actually made this as the title. So I can just remove this alternating color, go select all of it like this, go format, go alternating color, and then I can choose the color I want. And I can even edit them some more if you want and make your own custom style. And I just created two custom styles for my own. So something to note here is you will notice the conditional formatting has a higher precedence than the alternating color. You can remember that by just by looking at the order here. You can see conditional formatting is first and then alternating colors. Um, so this covers everything in format here. Another thing you can play with is your theme. So what your theme does is after you've done your project or whatever you're working on, or even if you do it at the beginning, you can just there's custom themes that you can go around, so or play around with, and they're quite useful if you have charts and stuff to make it look nice. I just like the standard theme. I don't think I've done anything much to require anything more than that. But last thing I want to show you is under conditional formatting. The I go insert, oops, format, conditional formatting, and I want to actually cancel this one, delete this. And if I say, let's say date is before tomorrow. So if it's anything today or prior or yesterday or anything of the sort, and then what I want to do here is actually no. Let's do a custom formula. Now, the idea of the custom formula is, as the name implies here, you can do any formula you want. So what I can actually do here is I can actually put in equal sign and say, for example, G2 is equal to, and cross it and make it none. Okay, so if I go like this and I actually turn this into true, um, okay, so if I move this to anything above it, you will notice that, let's say I put this at the beginning here. So you will notice that if G2 is true, then it crossed out the first one. Now, if I select another one, you will notice that it's based on what is the tick beside it. So um, Excel or spreadsheet is pretty smart, and usually knows that when you build this, usually mean that when people usually build this, they usually want the tick to be right beside what they're playing with, so what they're editing. But the actual proper way to actually do this is you add a dollar sign in the front, and that's exactly what you imply. So you're saying you start at G2, and then anything underneath only change to whatever is beside it. So depends on what version of Excel, or if you're using Google Sheets, that will always work. But if you're using Excel, if you don't include the equal sign here, then if you just press the box that you selected, it will just cross everything in the conditional formatting. You have to make sure that you put a uh, a dollar sign here, just to make sure that it only applies to conditional formatting that you chose, uh, based on the tick that you selected. So, so this is a bit about Excel here and how to make it work, and the various features available in Excel. Last thing we can talk about here is a color scale. So the color scale here is, let's say you're having, let's not apply to this one. Let's say we have this one. And let's insert, oh, sorry, format, conditional formatting. And I don't want to apply it to the first one. And let's say I go color scale and say that, for example, the minimum value will be green, the midpoint is nothing, and the max value is white. Okay. If I do that, let's say I put, make sure that they're all the same number format. And then let's say I make something that is like 1, and 100, 0, and make actually 0 all the way. And 50 as well. So as you can see here, what it does is it applies a color scale, um, which is actually the color scale is gradient. What I mean by that is, what I mean by the color scale is gradient is you will see that it's dark green or light green or approaching white based on how far the value is from the minimum and maximum. The maximum here is, of course, the highest number that you have in the list. In this case here, that will be 100. And the minimum will be the smallest number, which will be 0. So if I change the zeros, in this case here, and make this, let's say, this as well, and this 20. The color scale changes slightly based on the lowest value. So the lowest value will be the darkest green, which in this case here, I believe will be the 10. So, so this is another feature that you can have. So you can clearly see right away which one is darker and which one's lighter. You can even change the color to make it a completely different color. Um, and if you start doing that, it might get a bit confusing. So the midpoint you can't change. The midpoint is just the mix of the two colors that you have. So of course, you can change what type of values you have, but usually minimum and maximum will do. So this is how you'll approach this one here. So that covers a lot of the features available in spreadsheets as well in Excel. There is quite a lot more features that we can go over quickly, and you can protect your sheets. So in this case here, it is available now in Excel as well. So if you protect your sheets in Excel, you can put a password. And this one here, you just pretty much when you try and share it, there will be a protection to it, which means they won't access it unless you give them access or you give them a certain password. Um, you can actually um, you can you can name a range. So what I mean by that, let's say I select this here. Oops, I should probably go like this and go like this, and then change the name, call it the title, and go call it the title. And if I select any format here and go equals sum, which actually won't work, but let's go like this and go title, you will see the title does exist. And it is, if you look at here, you can actually see a yellow bordering around the range they selected. So that is a cool feature or a nice feature to have as well under named ranges. You can throughout your selection here, if you have duplicates, you can go data and then remove the duplicates and it will tell you there is 12 rows and 6 columns selected, and you can actually expand it according to Excel where there is data. Or so in this case here, it's when I expanded it, you can see in the background that it actually expanded up to H because that where there is data. You can even select that it has a header row, and you can select that or not. And then you just select what the various things you want to analyze. If you go like that, what it will look for is duplicate rows. So if you have like a huge amount of data, it will be quite important actually if you're doing machine learning or of some sort. It depends on what you're applying. But let's say you're doing machine learning and you don't want data to be repeated. So you can use that actually to remove some of the repeated data or the repeated rows. So that is quite useful to have. By trimming white space, what that means is if you have excessive spaces, so if you type a lot of spaces in your text or something, and you select that, you can remove the white space. If you trim them, and as you can see, it just removes it to one space. More than one space is excessive. Um, and then and then you can even go to cleanup suggestion. This is an AI powered by Google. So if there's anything that Google believes that you should clean up to make it look nicer, you can go on there and see the suggestions on the right here. And that covers pretty much everything that you're going to need through Excel. One more thing we can look into is grouping. So you can group various anything basically you want. And if you do that, that means that it will show up a confirmation here. And you can either group rows or columns. Let's say I group these rows here. And what this allows me to do is I can expand it or remove them. If I move them, they move. If I move them, they move together. So, which is quite useful sometimes if you just want to keep a set data together and make sure that they don't change. Of course, to remove the group, you can just go remove, right click and go remove the group, and it just removes the group. So it's that simple. And that pretty much covers everything that you're going to need or you might need or use in Excel. And that opens up for questions. Does anybody have any questions? Perfect. So one last thing to note, just for shortcut purposes here, you can actually go insert tick box here. If you select a link, you can go insert a link, for example, to that text, which let's say uh, this here would allow you to just select the cell and open the link if you want. So there's quite a lot of shortcuts in insert here. You can insert images, which you can either image in cell, which will only cover, the image will only be in one cell, or over cell. Many cases, you don't just use the over cell one. And as I mentioned, you can have comments or notes. You can even, if let's say you want to organize it better, you can have more than one sheet by just pressing the plus add sheet here at the bottom. And then you can review all the sheets if you have lots of sheets. You can just review all the sheets here and just go to them really quickly just based on the button. Okay. So I guess thank you for attending this session. And I guess I'll see you all soon.